Papercrafters Library. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create this quick and easy Call Me card. A fantastic little note that you can send to a long-distance friend you haven't heard from in a while. Now the stamp set that I'm using for this card is this one called Call Me from WOW Embossing, and I'm going to be using this little background, the telephone, as well as the Call Me sentiment. And I'm going to start by stamping the background. So here I have a piece of craft cardstock, and this craft cardstock is 3 inches wide. Now, one of my ends, as you can see, is straight. One looks like it was hand cut. So I'm just going to flip it right now so that the straight edge is facing downwards. And I'm simply doing this because it makes it a lot easier for me to see where I'm stamping as I'm filming this, because I can't lean over top or I'd block your view from the video camera. Now here I have this Fiskars stamp press, and as you can see here, I have mounted my stamp to the Fiskars stamp press. And it's very easy to use. As you can see, it's elevated from the grid paper. So all I have to do is align it, and then when I'm ready to stamp, I just press down and this stamps. Now, if you wait before you ink, you can, if I haven't inked my stamp yet, and I can use this to position, kind of figure out where I have to position this so that it's exactly where I want it to be in my cardstock. Once you're ready to go, you just take your ink, and I'm using my Memento Gray Flannel ink. This is from Sukaneko. And I'm going to press my ink all over my stamp. I'm then going to flip this over and determine my positioning. So I want to make sure it's centered from left to right, and it's about the same distance from the bottom. And then once I'm happy with the placement, I simply press down. And as you can see, these little sponge feet kind of compress, and it allows me to press down to stamp my image onto my cardstock, having it exactly where I positioned it using my stamp press. So there you can see what that looks like. At this point, my next step is now to trim around it. So I'm just going to use my paper trimmer from Stampin' Up. And that's good for the top, and I think I'm just going to trim the sides in just a little bit. Maybe I will trim the top and bottom just a tiny bit. Okay, so there you can see what that looks like. So we've now got our background piece stamped and trimmed. So my next step now is to stamp my image and my sentiment on here. And as you can see, I've gone ahead and I've mounted both of them onto an acrylic block so that I can do this all in one stamp. So first off, I'm going to take an anti-static bag and I'm going to run it all over my cardstock. I always do this when I'm embossing just to reduce the static, even though I find with the embossing powder I'm using, which is WOW, it's designed to be anti-static, but I find that I still use that anyways, because if you have static in your environment, then even with a great anti-static powder like WOW's, you can still end up with some flecks clinging where you don't want them to. So now the embossing powder that I'm using is this Primary Ebony Superfine from WOW. I've got a coffee filter here, and that's what I'm going to be pouring my embossing powder into. And I've got my Versamark stamp pad, and of course a heat tool. So I'm taking my Versamark pad, patting it all over my image and my sentiment. And I think I had something stuck to my stamp, so I'm just going to ink that up again. And then I'm going to position this onto my craft cardstock piece, stamp it, apply my embossing powder, flick off the excess, and then heat this using my heat tool. So I'll be back once this is melted. So now here you can see what this looks like now that it's been embossed. So my next step is to mat it onto black cardstock, and I'm using Bazzel's Ebony Black cardstock. So this got trimmed to 3 inches by 3 7/8 of an inch. So I'm going to cut this so that it is 4 1/8 of an inch by 3 1/4. And then there you can see it gives me a nice big black mat around. Now, of course, if you wanted to, you could always cut this so that it is a little bit of a narrower mat. So now I'm going to take my double-sided adhesive. I've applied some to the back, and then I'm going to center and stick this piece onto the black cardstock piece. And I actually think, because the paper gets a little bit warped from the heat, in order to keep it flat, you probably want to apply your adhesive a lot more liberally than you normally would. So there you can see what that now looks like. So now before I attach my stamped image piece to my card front, I want to add some texture. So here you can see I have a craft card. It's a standard 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card, and I'm going to texturize it using my linen and canvas impression plate from Paper Tray, and I'm using the canvas side. So I've opened up my card. I'm aligning the top edge of the impression plate with my score line or my fold line on my cardstock. Now here I have my multi-purpose platform from my Big Shot, and I've opened up both tabs. So I've placed my cutting plate on top, then my cardstock with my impression plate, and then I have the 2 embossing mats that I got from Paper Tray. There's this really thin, soft, floppy one, which then goes on top, and then there's this other one that's a rubber that's a little bit thicker, which goes on top of that, and then the second cutting plate, and then this whole thing goes through the Big Shot. So I'm back from the Big Shot, and I don't know how well you can see it, but this has just given some distressed texture to my card front. So I can now set aside that embossing or that impression plate, and I'm ready to attach my main image, which you can see here. Now to attach that, I'm going to be using some of my Stampin' Dimensionals from Stampin' Up! And as you can see here, I have quite a few of the ends left. So that's what I'm going to be using. I'm simply going to rip these straight edges apart and then apply this to my piece. It's probably a little bit of overkill, but what the heck. I'm going to peel off the backing. And then, actually, I'm going to flip this upside down just so I can better see what I'm doing. I want to align it, leaving an even border at the top, left, and right-hand side. So that means approximately a 1/2 inch border. Then once you're happy with the placement, you can go ahead and press that down. So the last thing left to do now is to tie some baker's twine into a button. Now the button is a black vintage button from Paper Tray, and my baker's twine is the charcoal baker's twine that comes from the Twinery. And I just need to trim the end of my baker's twine, except that I can't find a pair of scissors, so I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back with my scissors. The end was a little frayed, so it wasn't wanting to slide through the button, so I just trimmed that off. And now I'm feeding one end down through one hole, and then up through the second hole. And the other end of the twine is still attached to the roll. I'm going to start by tying it in a 1/2 knot, and then tying it in a bow. And the one thing you kind of have to be careful of when you're tying twine is that you don't twist the twine too much in your fingers as you're tying it, because otherwise you get very, you see like that, how my bow's wanting to twist. So normally I'd go back and redo that just to try to keep that from twisting, but just for the sake of time I'm going to leave it as is. And there you can see what that looks like. And then now to attach this to the card, you simply take a mini glue dot, and then I'm going to press this along the side of my card. There we go. So there you can see what that looks like, and our project is now finished. If you enjoyed this video, you enjoy the way we teach and would like to learn even more, we invite you to check out Paper Crafters Library. Whether you're a beginner looking to learn the basics or an advanced paper crafter looking to learn new skills and techniques, you'll find it all here. Stamping, card making, scrapbooking, altered art, we cover it all. With over 1,000 videos currently in our library and over 50 videos added each month, we are the largest and most comprehensive online library of video tutorials for paper crafters on the internet. We invite you to visit our library and see what we're all about.